My name is Dorothy Gordon, and I'm 31 years old. For most of my 20s, I believed I was living the kind of love story people envied, steady, loyal, built on years of shared dreams and quiet sacrifices. I thought I'd found my forever in Dave. We met in college. He was the charming, messy art major who lived like the world owed him inspiration, and I was the architecture student who color-coded every notebook. He used to say I was the calm to his chaos. I believed him. I fell in love with his unpredictability, his laugh, his constant need to turn everything into something beautiful. Back then, I thought that was enough. After graduation, reality came fast. I landed a full-time job at a design firm while Dave tried to turn his photography hobby into a business. The freelance world wasn't kind. He'd spend hours chasing clients who ghosted him or rejected his work. I carried the rent, the bills, the groceries, telling myself it was temporary. Love required patience, right? When he lost a major client, I found him slumped on the couch, staring into space. I knelt beside him, cupping his face. "We'll figure it out. You're talented, Dave." I remember the way his eyes softened. "You always believe in me," he whispered. I did. Too much. Years passed like that. Me chasing stability, him chasing passion. I learned to cook because we couldn't afford takeout. I gave up trips with my friends because we needed to save for his new equipment. Every sacrifice felt like an investment in our future. I wanted him to have the life he dreamed of, and I thought that meant putting mine on hold. Then one day, everything I believed in cracked. It was a Thursday night. Dave had gone out for drinks with coworkers from the agency that had recently hired him. He said they were celebrating a successful campaign. I didn't think twice. He'd been distant lately, yes, but I trusted him. I stayed home finishing a floor plan revision on my laptop when I heard his laptop ping from the living room table. I wasn't snooping. The message popped up in plain sight. A group chat titled Agency After Dark. The screen lit up with the words that changed everything. Sleeping with her is fine. I just close my eyes and think of Margot Robbie. There was a string of laughing emojis from his friends, followed by one that said, "Damn Dave Savage." I stared at the screen, frozen. My breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a scream. Her. That was me. I didn't need context. I knew exactly who he meant. My husband, my partner, the man I'd believed in for 7 years, was mocking our intimacy, reducing me to a punchline. My hands trembled. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. He wasn't just unfaithful in body, he was cruel in spirit. I closed the laptop, quietly afraid of what I might do if I didn't. My reflection in the black screen looked foreign pale, still eyes too wide. The apartment was silent except for the refrigerator hum, and that silence felt suffocating. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there staring at nothing, letting the weight of the words sink in. Sleeping with her is fine. Was that what I'd become? A habit, a convenience. That night, I went to bed alone. I lay stiff under the covers, staring at the ceiling. Every laugh, every kiss, every whispered "I love you," unraveling in my mind. He came home late, humming to himself, reeking of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. When he slid into bed, I didn't flinch. I just turned away. The next morning, over coffee, I asked casually, "Had fun last night?" He grinned. "Yeah, just the team. You know how it is." I smiled faintly, pretending nothing was wrong. "Sure." And in that instant, something inside me shifted. I didn't confront him. I didn't throw a mug or demand an apology. I decided something far worse. I decided to stop trying. From that day on, I stopped reaching for him. No hugs when he came home. No. Good morning kisses. No soft touches while passing in the hallway. I spoke only when necessary. I was polite, calm, detached. I became invisible in my own home. Part of me expected him to notice, to ask what was wrong, to care. But days turned into weeks, and he didn't. If anything, he seemed relieved. He spent more time at late meetings, came home smelling of cologne that didn't belong to him. Once his phone buzzed on the counter while he showered. I didn't touch it, but the name flashing across the screen, Madison Hale, was burned into my memory. I'd heard him mention her before, his creative partner. I started seeing patterns I'd ignored. The secretive smiles, the messages he hid when I entered the room, the way he'd say, "You wouldn't understand," whenever I asked about work. Still, I said nothing. Instead, I began to change quietly. I returned to the gym after work. I started sketching again, something I hadn't done since college. I filled notebooks with messy lines and half-finished drawings. It was like rediscovering pieces of myself buried beneath years of compromise. He noticed the change but misread it completely. "You're different lately," he said one night, chewing absent-mindedly at dinner. "Am I?" I asked. "Yeah, distant." I smiled. "Maybe I finally learned to give you space." He laughed uneasy, then shrugged. "Fine by me." That was the thing about Dave, he mistook peace for surrender. As I washed the dishes that night, his words echoed in my head, "Fine by me." I realized he truly believed I would never leave, that I was too patient, too gentle, too forgiving. But patience can turn into strategy. 2 weeks later, when he forgot his phone on the nightstand, I didn't snoop. I didn't need to. I hired someone. A quiet call to a private investigator I found through a friend at work. It felt strange, clinical, like signing a contract with my own heartbreak. I handed over the necessary details, names, schedules, places. Then I waited. In the waiting, I discovered a strange calm. At work, I performed better than ever. My manager even commented on how focused I seemed. I smiled politely, thinking, focus comes easily when you stop crying at night. 3 days later, the investigator emailed me a folder. Photos, dates, receipts. Dave and Madison at a bar laughing too closely. Madison's hand brushing his chest. Another photo, unmistakable, her entering his apartment building after midnight, his hand resting on the small of her back. I stared at the images, my pulse steady, my face blank. Proof. I had proof. No more guessing, no more giving him the benefit of the doubt. It was all real. And yet I didn't rage, I didn't even cry. The grief had passed, leaving only clarity. That night, when Dave came home humming as usual, I handed him a plate of dinner, smiled faintly, and asked, "Long day?" "Yeah," he said, kissing my forehead absent-mindedly. "Madison and I are pitching a new campaign. I'm sure it'll be great," I said softly. He didn't notice the double meaning. When he turned away, I watched him with detached fascination, like studying a stranger wearing my husband's face. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing my pain. He had no idea the woman standing in front of him was no longer his wife, but his quietest, most dangerous mistake. Dave used to fill the apartment with noise humming while he cooked, drumming on countertops, narrating his thoughts aloud. Now the silence between us was almost sacred, a living, breathing thing. I fed it daily. I didn't pick fights, I didn't ask questions, I let him believe he was free. In truth, I was watching. Morning routines became mechanical. He'd grab his coffee scroll through his phone, kiss my cheek without looking up. I'd murmur, "Have a good day," and go back to my cereal, pretending not to notice the faint whiff of women's perfume clinging to his shirt floral sharp, the kind of scent I'd never wear. One Saturday, he said he was meeting the team to brainstorm. He came home at midnight smelling of wine and laughter that wasn't mine. I sat by the window, sketching in my notebook under the soft hum of the city. When he stumbled in smiling like a boy who'd just discovered a secret, he didn't notice my eyes on him. "Hey, still up?" he asked. "Couldn't sleep," I said calmly. "Long night." He blinked. "Yeah, work stuff." I nodded, flipping a page in my sketchbook. Must have been productive. He hesitated, then mumbled something about deadlines before slipping into the bedroom. When the door closed, I allowed myself a single smile, not of happiness, but of certainty. Lies always left fingerprints. You just had to look long enough. Over the next few weeks, I observed his patterns. The way he'd angle his phone away, the way his eyes lit up when Madison texted. I caught the reflection of her name once glowing across his screen like a taunt. It was almost theatrical, the affair blooming in plain sight. But I didn't explode. I became invisible instead. Detached. Composed. My silence confused him, then frustrated him. He started throwing small jabs at dinner about how distant I'd become or how the house felt cold. "You used to laugh more," he said one evening, swirling his wine. "You used to come home earlier," I replied. The words landed like a stone between us. He looked up startled. I didn't break eye contact. He looked away first. I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was training him to feel the emptiness he'd created. In the quiet hours after midnight, I'd sit alone on the couch, scrolling through the PI's reports on my phone. Pictures, timestamps, receipts. Dave and Madison smiling in a dimly lit restaurant. Her head on his shoulder outside a gallery. Him buying her a silver bracelet identical to one I'd once admired, except now it was on another woman's wrist. Each new piece of evidence dulled my pain and sharpened my resolve. I began organizing it neatly in folders. Digital, physical. I even printed the photos, labeling them chronologically like an architect drafting the blueprint of her own liberation. The irony wasn't lost on me. I used to design buildings that wouldn't collapse. Now I was preparing for the demolition of my marriage. At work, I became someone else, poised, efficient, unshakable. My manager noticed. "Dorothy, whatever you're doing differently, keep it up. You're glowing lately." I smiled politely. Maybe I just stopped apologizing for things that aren't my fault. Dave noticed too, though, for the wrong reasons. "You've been dressing up more," he said one morning, eyeing the tailored blouse and heels. "Do I need a reason?" I asked, buttoning my sleeve. He shrugged, smirking. "Trying to impress someone, just myself." That line silenced him more effectively than any accusation could. By the time autumn arrived, my patience had calcified into control. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calculating. One night I was half asleep when Dave stumbled into bed and whispered, "You okay?" "Yes," I answered flatly. "Are you?" He paused, confused. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because sometimes people pretend everything's fine when they're lying to themselves." He laughed it off. "You sound like a therapist." "Maybe I've been taking notes," I murmured. He fell asleep. I didn't. I lay there listening to his shallow breathing, wondering how long it would take for his little world to crumble. A week later, I found a hotel receipt in the pocket of his jeans while doing laundry. Room 508, Sunday night. The date matched one of Madison's tagged posts online, a blurry cocktail glass with the caption, "Best night ever." He was becoming careless. Good. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and called my lawyer, a woman named Felicity. I'd quietly met for coffee weeks before. She specialized in divorce settlements, particularly ones with infidelity clauses. "Still no confrontation?" Felicity asked. "Not yet," I said. "I'm just building the foundation." "Smart," she replied. "When you're ready, it'll all collapse cleanly." Collapse cleanly. The phrase lingered. That was exactly what I wanted. Dave, meanwhile, seemed almost giddy these days, humming again, wearing new shirts, texting late into the night. Once he caught me watching and smirked. "Don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you're figuring me out." I smiled faintly. "Maybe I already have." He laughed, but there was unease in it. For the first time, I think he sensed it, the balance of power had shifted. He was still living under the illusion that I didn't know. But I did, and worse, I'd stopped caring. The first snow came early that year. I remember standing by the window, watching the city lights blur against the falling flakes. Dave texted that he'd be home late work dinner. I replied with a single word. Okay. No more waiting, no more hoping, only preparation. When he finally stumbled in past midnight, cheeks flushed from alcohol and lipstick faintly smudged near his collar, I was already in bed, pretending to sleep. He stood in the doorway watching me, maybe expecting a question or a fight. I gave him nothing. That nothing scared him more than any scream could have. Because silence is not weakness. It's power dressed in patience. And mine was about to become lethal. By the time winter arrived, I could tell Dave felt untouchable. He'd grown careless, checking his phone in plain sight, whistling as he dressed for work events, coming home late, with that smug afterglow of someone who thought he'd fooled everyone. But what he didn't realize was that every careless move was a brick in the wall I was quietly building between us. We had become polite strangers living under one roof. We shared meals, but not conversations, beds, but not warmth. The sound of his laughter had become foreign, an echo from a past life. I still cooked dinner every night because habits die slower than love. He'd walk in, kiss the top of my head absently, and say, "You're amazing, Dorothy." I'd answer, "I know." He thought I was being playful. I wasn't. The night everything shifted again started innocently enough. He came home early, a rare surprise, carrying groceries. "Thought I'd cook tonight," he said brightly. "Let's do something different." For a moment, I almost believed the act. Almost. We ate by candlelight, wine glasses half full, jazz, humming softly from the speaker. It could have been romantic if not for the fact that he couldn't stop checking his phone every few minutes. I watched him type his thumbs dancing across the screen and asked gently, "New campaign?" He looked up startled. "What?" "Oh yeah. Madison and I are finalizing ideas for the spring launch." Madison again. Always Madison. I sipped my wine eyes, never leaving his face. "You talk about her a lot." He grinned. "She's talented. You'd like her." Would I? Yeah, she's got that creative spark. Kind of reminds me of you when we first met. There it was, the casual insult wrapped in nostalgia. The version of me he remembered, the one who adored him, who believed stability was enough, was gone. But he didn't even notice. Later, as I was loading the dishwasher, he leaned against the counter. "You've been different lately." "How so?" I asked. He shrugged. "I don't know. More confident. Colder, too. Maybe confidence and warmth aren't the same thing," I said quietly. He frowned, like the thought had never occurred to him. I could tell my calm unnerved him. People like Dave feed on reactions, tears, anger, anything that proves they still matter. I gave him none of that. Just quiet control. The next morning, while he showered, I opened his jacket pocket. Another hotel receipt. Same room number, 508. Different date. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just a dull, predictable ache. Like déjà vu. When he came out, towel slung low on his hips, I handed him his coffee. "You're meeting Madison again today?" I asked casually. He froze for a split second before forcing a smile. "Yeah. Big presentation." "Of course," I said, then leaned in, brushing a speck of lint off his shirt. "Make sure you look your best." He hesitated, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're acting weird. Am I?" I tilted my head. Maybe I've just accepted things for what they are. He didn't ask what that meant. Maybe he didn't want to know. That evening I called Felicity again. "My lawyer. It's time," I said simply. Her tone sharpened. "You have enough proof, more than enough. Then let's prepare." I spent the next week assembling the evidence, printing photos, organizing dates, pairing receipts with timestamps from his messages. The folder was heavy when I slid it across Felicity's desk. She flipped through it, slowly nodding. "This is airtight, Dorothy. The infidelity clause will hold." "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I just want my life back." She smiled faintly. "You're getting both." When I got home that night, Dave was sprawled on the couch, watching a movie. "Hey, babe," he said lazily. "Pizza's on the way." I sat beside him, studying his profile, the same face I used to trace with my fingers in the dark, now just a stranger's silhouette. "Dave," I said softly, "are you happy?" He blinked. "What with us? With life?" He laughed awkwardly. "You've been reading those therapy blogs again, huh?" "Just answer," I said, voice calm but steady. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Dorothy. I guess I wish things were more exciting. Life feels predictable." "Predictable isn't the same as empty," I replied. He shrugged. "Maybe. But I miss when things felt spontaneous, alive, like when..." He smiled wistfully. "Like when we first met. You were fun then." I smiled too, though mine was sharper. "And now I'm what convenient." He frowned. "You're twisting things." "No," I said softly. "I'm just hearing you clearly for the first time." The silence stretched long between us, thick and heavy. Finally, he stood up, muttering, "I'm going to bed." When he was gone, I exhaled slowly and whispered into the empty room, "So am I, just not with you." That night, I packed a small suitcase, not to leave, but to prepare. I gathered important documents, personal items, things I'd need when the storm hit. The next morning, I left early for work and stopped by the bank, moved part of our joint savings into my own account, legally protected under the prenup. When I returned home that evening, Dave greeted me with a smirk. "Big day." "You have no idea," I said, slipping off my coat. 2 days later, he announced casually over breakfast, Madison and I might travel for a shoot next month. Just the two of us. Bali. I looked up from my coffee, expression unreadable. "Sounds fun." He blinked, caught off guard by my lack of reaction. "You're okay with that?" "Of course," I said, smiling faintly. "You should go. You've earned it." The satisfaction in his face was almost pitiful. He mistook permission for power. That night, I stood by the bedroom window, watching the reflection of the city lights ripple across the glass. Behind me, Dave snored, softly oblivious. I whispered to the darkness, "Enjoy the freedom you think you have. You'll need it." Because in a matter of weeks, every illusion he'd built, every lie he'd told, would come crashing down around him. And when it did, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd just stand still and let the silence finish what I started. The morning I filed for divorce, the sky was gray, soft drizzle coating the city in silver light. I remember thinking it looked like the world was washing itself clean. Maybe in a way I was too. I walked into Felicity's office with the calm of someone who had rehearsed every step. The folder of evidence, photos, receipts, messages was neatly bound. Felicity skimmed through them once more, nodding. "He doesn't stand a chance," she said. "I don't want him to lose everything," I replied. "I just want what's fair." She gave me a knowing look. "Dorothy, you've been fair long enough." By that evening, the papers were filed. Dave didn't even know yet. He thought he still had time, that he still controlled the rhythm of our lives. That illusion shattered the next day at noon. I'll never forget the look on his face when a courier delivered the thick envelope to his office. He called me minutes later, voice trembling with disbelief. "What is this?" he demanded. "Legal paperwork," I said calmly. "You'll want to read it carefully. You filed for divorce." "Yes." "You're serious." "I've never been more serious." There was silence on the other end, followed by a brittle laugh. "You can't just, Dorothy, we can fix this." "Can we?" I asked quietly. "Tell me how." He didn't answer. That night he came home furious. "You blindsided me," he shouted, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. "I gave you every chance to be honest," I said, my tone even. "You chose lies instead." He rubbed his face, pacing. "This is insane. You think you can just walk away and take everything?" I met his eyes. "No, I don't think I can. I know I can. The prenup says so." His jaw tightened. "You're bluffing. Check your email." He did. I watched the color drain from his face as he opened the digital copies Felicity had sent every timestamp, every photograph, every receipt, every message to Madison. The clause was clear: infidelity forfeited shared assets. He sank onto the couch, hands gripping his hair. "You had someone follow me. I had someone tell me the truth," I replied. For a long moment he said nothing. The only sound was the steady tick of the kitchen clock. Then he muttered, "I never thought you'd actually do it." "That's the problem, Dave," I said softly. "You never thought I would do anything." After that night, everything moved fast. His lawyer called mine. The negotiations were brief. The proof was overwhelming. I kept the house, my savings, my car. He was left scrambling for a place to stay. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy, not yet, but free. He moved in with Madison a week later. I expected that. They posted pictures online, smiling selfies, captions about new beginnings. Mutual friends sent me screenshots waiting for my reaction. I had none. Let them play house, I thought. Let them believe love can grow in soil, fertilized by betrayal. For a while I disappeared into routine, work, gym, sleep. My life became quiet again, but this time the silence belonged to me. Then the cracks began to show. It started with a rumor from an old coworker of his. "Hey, did you hear Dave and Madison got fired?" Office romance went public. I smiled faintly. No, I hadn't. Then came whispers that Madison had been flirting with a client behind his back. Soon after she dumped him, moved out overnight, left him with overdue rent and a pile of unpaid bills. Karma, it seemed, had a sense of timing. One evening, as I was watering the plants on the balcony, I got a text from an unknown number. "Dave, I made a mistake." I didn't respond. 2 days later, another one. "Madison's gone. She used me. You were right." Still nothing from me. He called once, twice, 3 times. I silenced each ring. Eventually, he showed up at the building, waiting by the front gate like a ghost. I saw him through the intercom camera. Unkempt eyes, hollow rain dripping from his hair. When I stepped outside, he looked almost startled. "Dorothy," he said hoarsely, "can we talk?" I folded my arms. About what us? Everything. I was an idiot. I ruined everything good in my life. "I told you that months ago," I said. He took a step closer. "I'm serious. I know I hurt you. But Madison, she's not who I thought she was. She's toxic, controlling. I see now what I had with you. You were real." I let out a soft laugh, not bitter, just tired. "Dave, you don't get to rediscover love when your backup plan fails." "Please," he said, voice breaking. "I don't have anyone. That's because you treated everyone like they were replaceable." Rain started to fall again, light but steady. He stood there, soaked, desperate, reaching for something that no longer existed. "I'm begging you," he whispered. "Just help me. Let me in. We can fix this." I looked at him for a long time, then said gently, "You can't rebuild a house that burned down using the same ashes." He stared speechless. I turned and went back inside. Behind the closed door, I exhaled shakily, not from sadness but relief. The version of me who would have pitied him was gone. I wasn't his caretaker anymore. Days passed, then weeks. The text dwindled, then stopped. Through the grapevine, I heard he'd moved back in with his parents. His photography studio had shut down. Most of his old friends stopped answering his calls. I didn't smile when I heard it. I didn't need to. Justice doesn't always roar, it settles quietly like dust after an explosion. One afternoon, Felicity invited me to lunch to celebrate the finalized divorce. You handled it better than most, she said, raising her glass. I learned the art of patience, I replied. Turns out silence was my sharpest weapon. That night, as I stood on the balcony watching the city glow beneath the rain, I thought of everything Dave had taken from me: trust, time, tenderness, and how I'd taken it all back without a single scream. He used to say I was too calm, too predictable. He was right. Predictable people are dangerous. You always know where to find them until you look and they're gone. And when I was gone, so was his power. It was almost poetic the way he returned exactly 1 year after the day I found that message. The same gray drizzle, the same heaviness in the air, like time had folded in on itself. I had just finished dinner when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw him. Dave. His clothes were soaked through, his once carefully styled hair, now flat and dripping. His eyes, though they weren't the same. They looked haunted. For a second, I thought of not opening the door, but something in me wanted closure, not revenge, not pity, just the quiet ending to a chapter I'd already outgrown. I cracked the door, the chain still on. What do you want, Dave? He swallowed rainwater streaking down his jaw. To talk. Please. Just 5 minutes. 5 minutes won't fix a year of betrayal. He winced, hands trembling slightly. I deserve that. But please, Dorothy, I've hit bottom. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about what I did to you. I studied him for a long moment, then unlatched the chain and opened the door just enough for him to step inside. He hesitated, wiping his shoes on the mat like a guilty child. The apartment hadn't changed much, but it looked different because I was different. Softer lighting, fresh flowers, new art on the walls. My space finally mine. He looked around as if walking through a museum of memories he didn't belong to anymore. You've redecorated, he murmured. I cleaned out what didn't serve me, I said. That includes people. He flinched but nodded. I deserve that too. For a moment, the only sound was the rain against the windows. Then he spoke voice-breaking Madison. She wasn't what I thought. She was jealous, controlling. She wanted everything to be about her. When the affair went public, we both got fired. She blamed me. I held up a hand. Stop. I don't need the post-mortem of your choices. He looked up, eyes wet. Dorothy. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I am. Truly. You were the only one who ever believed in me. You saw the best version of me, and I destroyed that. I don't know how to live with what I did. There was a time when those words would have broken me. Now they just echoed softly hollow, like rain on an empty street. Dave, I said quietly, I spent years thinking if I just loved harder, you'd finally see me. You didn't. You saw convenience, comfort, stability, and you called it boring. He looked down. I was stupid. You were cruel, I corrected gently. There's a difference. He took a shaky breath. Can we at least start over? Not as husband and wife, just as people, maybe friends. I smiled faintly, sadness threading through it. You can't be friends with someone you once broke on purpose. He rubbed his face, frustration and grief mixing in his expression. I've lost everything, Dorothy. My job, my friends, my reputation. Please, I have nothing. I studied him carefully. You still have the one thing I gave you at the end, Dave. He frowned. What's that, consequences? The silence that followed was deep, almost kind. He nodded, slowly defeated. You really are different now. I had to be, I said. You taught me that peace isn't something people give you. It's something you build after they've burned everything down. He stood there for another moment, waiting for something that would never come, a flicker of forgiveness maybe, or the softness I used to wear like perfume. But I had none left for him. Finally, he whispered, Goodbye, Dorothy. Goodbye, I said. And thank you. He looked confused. For what? For teaching me the power of leaving quietly. He blinked, eyes glossy, then turned and walked out into the rain. I closed the door behind him and didn't watch him go. For a long while, I stood in the stillness of the apartment, listening to the faint hum of the city beyond the glass. I should have felt vindicated, but instead I felt calm, empty in the best possible way. Weeks later, a friend invited me to a wedding. Jake, an old colleague we both used to know. I almost didn't go, but something in me wanted to mark the end properly, surrounded by laughter, instead of regret. I arrived in a pale blue dress hair, pinned neatly, my heart light. Halfway through the reception, I caught sight of him across the room. Dave. Alone. No Madison this time, no spark in his eyes. just a man watching a world that had already moved on without him. He approached hesitantly during dinner. "You look incredible," he said. "Thank you," I replied. "You look present." He chuckled weakly. I deserve that. Before I could respond, someone called my name. Ryan Tall Kind Eyes. The man I'd met at my art workshop months ago. He walked up, slipped an arm gently around my waist. "Everything okay?" I smiled. "Perfect." Dave's gaze flickered between us. "You found someone." "I found myself," I corrected. "He just happens to fit into that." Ryan offered his hand to Dave. "Nice to meet you, man." Dave hesitated, then shook it. "You too." As Ryan guided me back to the dance floor, the band started playing a soft acoustic song, something old and tender. I leaned into his chest, my head resting against his shoulder. I could feel Dave's eyes on me from across the room, but for once I didn't feel the weight of them. He taught me what love shouldn't be, and in doing so made space for what it could become. As the music swelled, I closed my eyes, not to escape this time, but to remember it. The warmth, the quiet safety, the peace that didn't demand suffering first. I whispered to myself,